All right, so how we understand the history of the Earth is by how life has changed and evolved over time. So we can see these fossils here, right? The fossils in rocks give us clues as to how old those rocks are, and we classify the ages of the Earth by what was alive during that time. Okay? So remember that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and that we use life to classify how classify the different ages and different time periods of Earth's existence. Also, if you're not taking notes, you're doing life wrong. All right, so this here, we will come back to this multiple times throughout the lecture today. This is a map of the history of the Earth over time. And we have Eon, Era, Period, and Epoch. Okay, and we'll talk about all of those, all right? Precambrian, phanerozoic, all of these different things, okay? So, we will come back to this and it will make more sense. Right now, it just looks like a bunch of colors to you. So, we got our good old friend, the Stegosaurus here. Eon, Era, Period, Epoch. These are the 4 categories of time in the history of Earth. Eon is the longest division of time. For reference, the Earth is only in its 2nd eon. There will be more eons, yeah. What, you think the Earth is going to end like tomorrow? Yes. Extremely unlikely. The Earth has had many worse years than 2020, I promise. Doesn't seem like it? I mean, humanity has had much worse years than 2020. Let's talk about the bubonic plague, shall we? 1/3 of people gone. Murder hornet. Well, those have existed for a really long time. Just they've been isolated to Japan. Okay. So an eon is the longest. It's also a very fun word to say. It is. Eon. The longest division of time is an eon, followed by an era. Followed by an era. Followed by a period and an epoch. So I like to think of these as epoch. No. I like to think of these as a year, a month, a week, and a day. We already use different ways of measuring time. So we have multiple eras in an eon. Just because I'm comparing an era to a month doesn't mean that there are 12 eras in every eon. These are not set time periods. So not every eon is the same length. Not every era is the same length. Not every period is the same length. The divisions between these are how life changes over time. The living things at that time, all right? So moving on, we are going to start at the beginning, which is usually a good place. So we will start at the beginning of the Earth's history. The Earth, remember, is 4.5 billion years old. This is the Precambrian Eon, which was the first eon, and the era is the Haitian Era. The Haitian Era, this was not a good time to be around. Well, there was nothing alive at this time because nothing could live at this time. the Earth was essentially, well, the floor was lava everywhere. Floor is lava, but everywhere. This is named after the Greek god of the underworld, Hades. Okay, Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, because it really would have looked similar to the Judeo-Christian idea of hell. So volcanoes were everywhere. You had meteors raining down from the sky all the time because the solar system was still kind of finishing its formation. So there was just rocks falling from the sky all the time.
You know how hell's made. The lava from the outer core of the Earth and to the inner core. There you go.
There you go. So the atmosphere was toxic. It was mostly ammonia, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. There was no oxygen.
It's ammonia. Your house is really cold. I like it. I thought ammonia was like a disease or something.
Nope. That's pneumonia. All right, so yeah, it was not a good time. Anyone have an idea of what this thing is in the sky?
That is the sun.
It is the moon.
That's the moon?
The moon had just finished forming at this time. And it was still molten. Not only was it still molten, it was extremely close to the Earth.
You know how the Earth has hotness.
Not really. So the moon was much, much closer to the Earth at the time. And as time has gone on, it has moved farther away. So if you were able to go back to this time, it would be cool to see the moon so close. You would need to take a pressure suit with breathing apparatus. What? You would not need sunglasses. The moon wouldn't shine, it would glow. Okay? It wasn't like, it would just look like a ball of lava because that's exactly what it was.
It's basically, we could go there. We just had to have
It'd be like a nightlight, yeah. Even more than it already is.
How long do you think they'd be able to live there? Like, just like as a time survival?
A few seconds. Okay, yeah, you'd be dead within a few seconds. All right, so moving on. So the Haitian Era was 500 million years long. We are now into the Arcane Era. We are still in the Precambrian Eon. This is when life begins. Something alive in the ocean. Okay. This is when life begins. All of the living things at this time were single-celled, very, very small. They were not complex, they were simple. Similar to what we would look at bacteria today, but even simpler than bacteria. Yeah, Aliana. What? So similar to things that we could find on Mars, we've never found bacteria on Mars. There's never been any life found anywhere else than Earth. There have been some maybe symbols that maybe like signals of things that might be living, but nothing conclusive yet. So it's hard to study this time of Earth's history because there wasn't a lot alive at this time. There wasn't a lot, well, there was a lot of living things, but they didn't leave anything behind, right? In order for a fossil to exist, like what you would consider a fossil, would be a bone that is turned into stone, is turned into rock. But there was nothing to fossilize here. However, this right here is called a stromatolite. And this is the layers of dead bodies of little bacteria
Oh, dead bodies of
over
bacteria.
hundreds
That's concerning.
of thousands of years. This would take a very long time to form.
Is it still there?
Stromatolites are still around, yeah,
What happens if a citizen broke one? Would they be deep show?
yes. Because these are some of the oldest evidence of living things in the world. At this time, the earth would have been very slimy, covered in a lot of just, yeah, kind of goopy, slimy stuff. All right? Anyone know where this image comes from? Yeah, Aiden? Yellowstone. This is the famous rainbow pool, rainbow pond or something like that in Yellowstone. It is a hot spring. It's an open, hot pool. And there are still archaea that live in this.
I'm not concerning.
Archaea are the most ancient type of living thing. So the Arcane Era is in reference to what was alive at this time. Archaea means like old and primitive. So there are things that are still alive today called archaea that were similar to what were alive then. Okay? So moving forward. Now we get to the longest era in Earth's history. This is the Proterozoic. Proterozoic era.
That's the one I decided to do for this research.
You might be thinking about the paleozoic.
Maybe
They're different. So Proterozoic. So does anyone know what these four letters together, Z-O-I-C, as a suffix? Animals. Dang it. Yes, because it's on the board. So zoology is the study of animals. A zoological society, a zoo, is a place where you go to see animals. Z-O in Latin, or actually I think this comes from Greek, refers to animals. Okay? So Proterozoic means early or simple. Okay?
What's terrible?
Protero? What? Protero means like early and simple. Okay? So this is the age of early, simple organisms. Okay? So this here is one of the first fossils. All right, so we see this here. This is the fossil of a worm. Not a worm like you would dig up today, but something similar. It died, and then as it fell to the sea floor, it landed in some soft mud. It was then immediately buried by another layer of mud. And its body left an impression on the mud. This here is important for us to know about. So you can see its body here. It curls around like this, right?
Looks like a weird centipede.
And you can see in the center, there is this thing.
That is vertebrae.
This is the beginning of a spinal cord.
So yeah.
This is an ancient spinal cord. All living things with a spinal cord are descendants of animals like this. That includes you and me, and the geckos, and birds, and amphibians, and most fish. Okay? They are all descendants from organisms that essentially look like worms here in the Proterozoic era. Okay, so Proterozoic meaning early simple animals. And now life has gone crazy. This is the Cambrian Explosion. The Cambrian period of the Paleozoic era of the phanerozoic eon. So we have now entered the second eon of Earth's history.
It looks cute. I want to pet it.
No, you wouldn't want to pet it. So these organisms have become very complex very quickly. Not only have they become complex, but they have diversified greatly. And this is the first time that we really have true fossils because everything starts to get a shell. All right? And life has gone absolutely nuts. All right? These, you can see this thing right here, the eye on top of its head, that is a compound eye, similar to the eyes of bees and flies. And you can see these arms. Yeah, this thing was quite large. Okay, this thing would be about the same size as you.
I want to pet it even more.
All right. These things were pretty big. These look like insects. These are actually other arthropods. These are called trilobites, right? And here we have these crustaceans. So early organisms, this guy, and no, this is not, you're seeing this correctly. This is 5 compound eyes on top of its head with a claw/arm coming out of its mouth.
Fun. Go on. Can I cuddle it?
No, you can't, because they're all dead. All right. So, everything that came about during this time was absolutely crazy. This is called the Cambrian Explosion. And the reason why that is important for you to understand is because this is the beginning of the new eon in Earth's history. No, because it's based on like what happens with life. So we have left the Precambrian eon behind because we are now in the phanerozoic, which means complex life, complex animals. We are now in the eon of complex animals, phanerozoic. Phanero meaning complex, zoic meaning animals. Huh. I didn't choose the name. He can be mean to the words if he wants. I didn't choose it. Okay, so the Phanerozoic has 3 eras. These eras are the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. You can see that each of those end in zoic, meaning animal, right? Paleo meaning ancient. Meso means middle, so it's the Middle Age. And Ceno means modern or current. And we have here these interesting shelled organisms, these like club claw situations. That was in the Paleozoic era. Now these things, these are essentially like sea scorpions. Yeah.
I want it as a
Now we have the Mesozoic, which was time of dinosaurs, and we'll talk about that. And we are currently in the Cenozoic era, which is the era of modern animals. We missed the last two eras of the Phanerozoic. You've missed a lot of time, okay? You've been around for what, 14 years, right? Yeah, you've missed a lot of time, about 4.5 billion years. All right, in Earth's history, that is. All right, so when we look at these different eras, they are divided by what kind of living things are around. And the division between them is made by extinctions. And we will see, we'll talk more about extinction at a different time. But we'll see how life has changed over time. So the first era of the Phanerozoic eon is the Paleozoic. Most everything had a shell. Shells were all the rage this time. Things lived in the oceans. Around the middle of this era is when fish started making their little escapades onto land more and more, and amphibians developed. Insects also start doing the land-based thing. Yep. Carboniferous was an interesting period. All the trees were huge.
I'm working because I know that I need to get $8.
Yes. Okay. This era ends in extinction, and I believe that this is actually this extinction. We'll come back to it later. This extinction is the big one. It's called the Great Dying, which is fantastic. I believe that 94% of all species on Earth went extinct. We'll talk about it in greater detail later. The Great Dying. It's called the Ordovician dying.
What, did it explode all over again?
We don't know exactly what happened, but it was not good. There had been a couple of other extinctions before this. One time, life almost ended up killing itself because it made so much oxygen. So, yeah, it almost oxygenated the atmosphere to death. All right. How is that a bad thing? Well, because plants, carbon dioxide. They need carbon dioxide, not oxygen. Okay. So this era ends in extinction. Lots of fun shells from this time. This is from the Cambrian, which is the first period of the Paleozoic. Then we get to the Mesozoic, which was between 250 million and 65 million years ago. It's dino time. The dinos. So we have, here we have a Tyrannosaurus. It's probably a Tyrannosaurus dominus, or maybe, yeah, or Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the two. Ankylosaurus, Velociraptor, Pachycephalosaurus, Oviraptor, Archaeopteryx, Triceratops, and this bad boy is Quetzalcoatlus. Quetzalcoatlus, when it unfurled its wings, would have gone from those windows to this glass wall over here. It was a big boy. So here's what's interesting about this picture, okay? Here's what's interesting about this picture. In this picture, can anyone identify which one of these is not a bird?
No.
These are all birds except for this one.
How? We have wings! You wonder how a bird.
It's a different type of bird.
Nope. The pteranodons are not No. The pteranodons went extinct. The pteranodons all went extinct. Okay, the pterosaurs, right? This is a gigantic pterosaur. They all went extinct. All of these organisms are the ancestors of modern birds. So dinosaurs, so anything that was a true dinosaur, is a bird. And birds are dinosaurs. Chickens are weird. Yeah, if you ever need convincing that birds are dinosaurs, look up the foot of a cassowary. Cassowary, C-A-S-S-O-W-A-R-Y. C-A-S-S-O-W-A-R-Y, cassowary. Look up its foot. It's straight up a dinosaur foot. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, all the living things on the planet. So these are not reptiles. Dinosaurs are not reptiles. There were reptiles during this time, like crocodilians and so forth. Dinosaurs are not reptiles. Just like different thing. Okay? This era also ends in an extinction. There were 3 periods during this time: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous.
So Jurassic is how we got the name from Jurassic Park?
Yes. The Cretaceous was the time, really Jurassic Park should actually be named Cretaceous Parks because just about everything that you see in those movies was from the Cretaceous period. It's true. Okay, moving on. The Cenozoic, the rise of the mammals. Mammals had existed before this time, except they were mostly snacks for velociraptors and so forth. But after the extinction of the non-bird dinosaurs, the mammals took over, and that includes us.
We be dominant.
We be dominant now, yep. Mammals are the dominant order on the planet now. It's mammal time. We do the whole like milk and fur thing. That's kind of our thing, right? So you are going to pick, going back, one of the eras of the phanerozoic eon. All right? You're going to pick one of the eras of the phanerozoic eon. This is the assignment. When you make that decision, you'll be deciding between Paleozoic, which was the time of crazy, like during the Silurian, there were these fish that had external skeleton, like external skull bones that were absolutely terrifying. They're called the, what were they? Something derms? I don't remember. Terrifying. Like sharks are scary, but these things are way scary. The Silurian, maybe the Ordovician, one of the two. They were really scary. So you're going to pick one of these 3 eras. Let me pull up the assignment here for you to look at. It is called the Era Research Project. You're going to pick the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, or the Cenozoic. Pick one of them. So you get to research crazy, insane life during the Paleozoic, or dinosaurs, or the modern living things, the Cenozoic. It is due tomorrow. So you're going to do some research on it. So you need to tell me a few things. Let me explain this one here. You need to pick 3 periods of the era. Okay? The Mesozoic only had 3 periods, the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. The Paleozoic has a total of 7. No? Yes, 7. So you only need to pick 3 there. The Cenozoic also has 3, the Paleogene, the Neogene, and the Quaternary. Okay? Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary. So you need to pick 3 of them, which if you pick Mesozoic or Cenozoic, there are only 3. So you need to tell me what information you can find about that period. And you need to give me 2 examples of things that lived during that period. So for instance, if you pick the Paleozoic, you could pick something, let's say you go and look at the Carboniferous, which is right here. The Carboniferous was a time of gigantic trees and even scarier large bugs, like griffin flies. Griffin flies, dragonflies with a wingspan of 2 meters. That would straight up pick up a small dog and carry it away. Oh, not just carry it away, they would go nom nom on a small dog. Not quite twice your arm length. My arm length is 185 centimeters. So the wingspan of griffin flies would be about 15 centimeters longer than my arm. Pretty cool, okay? So you're going to find information about the periods. What are the timelines of the periods? How long did they last? How did the era end? Okay, what caused the extinction that ended that era or whatever? And then how has that era been studied? So where are the fossils found? What do the scientists do to study this era and so forth? This assignment is due tomorrow, as are all of, tomorrow is the last day that you can turn it in. Tomorrow is also the last day that you can turn in anything for this term. So I would recommend getting some stuff in, all right? I'm going to give you the remainder of class, which is half an hour, to work on this assignment. Get to it.